I'm going to tell you about this brand new YouTube channel called Autistic Heroes. Here I'm going to post some regular videos about autism, all based on my own lived experience as someone who received a very late diagnosis of on the autistic spectrum in my 50s. So, my name's David, and it was about a decade ago now I received this very late diagnosis. I'd always felt a little bit different, but for a few years I began to suspect that I was autistic or somewhere on the autistic spectrum. At first I said I have that sort of personality, and as the years went by it became more and more clear to me, and I began to research autism, and I began to use resources for autistic people and thought, this seems to be more and more me. So I thought, yes, I'm going to go to my GP, ask for a referral, and I did that, and I got an assessment and very clear diagnosis. I received a very clear diagnosis. I was married. I was working as a psychology lecturer, but I always felt, some of the things in my marriage, some of the discussions that we had and arguments that we had were not usual. And my wife had worked with people on the autistic spectrum, and she had reinforced that to me. I hadn't, in my study of psychology, really looked at autism, so I didn't really suspect that. I may have mentioned it somewhere in my degree. It's not something I'd taught at all. But not long after that, there was an opportunity to take a voluntary redundancy from my lecturing role, which I did, and I wanted to do something that was more practical, that would help people, and I eventually set up Autistic Heroes as a social enterprise, coaching and mentoring other adults on the autistic spectrum, and particularly those that were going for late diagnosis or had a late diagnosis and were coming to terms with their autism. I began running workshops as well as talking to people on one-to-one, workshops with over a dozen people in them, discussing a number of topics related to autism. And so with all that experience, I want to share some of that in this channel. But not just the. These are not just things that I've researched, but these are things that I've really reflected on my own experience, and my own challenges, my own abilities that have come out of being autistic. And through quite a lot of reflection that's come from getting that diagnosis and sharing that with other people on one-to-one basis or in the workshops, I've just grown and grown in that insight and feel that I have some insight and wisdom that is worth passing on to people. And so I thought I'm going to create this channel to explore that and to talk about some of those reflections of different topics. Because I think my autism diagnosis has given me such an amazing insight into my whole life. I remember when I first received it, though at first I might have gone down quite a bit and gone, oh, this is, is this me? I feel like my whole identity's dissolving. But I began to rebuild, and I looked back on my life, and so much fell into place. Even though I'd thought about the things before, I think there's something about a professional saying you're autistic that gives you that, or gave me that confirmation that this really is me. And I've looked back on my childhood, my time at university, my adulthood, my relationships, my work, all of those things just made so much sense in terms of me being autistic. And it's just wonderful to have been in over this last decade, to have been in that position to be able to reflect and to share those insights with people, and to have received some positive feedback on that people have told me how helpful they've been. And one approach that I've taken, which I think has been particularly helpful, and why I've called this Autistic Heroes, is that I've taken a positive psychology approach, a strength-based approach, which sees not just autism in terms of deficits and challenges and problems, but also in terms of gifts and strengths and abilities. So now I want to share some of these insights with you and hopefully help you to prepare for your life on the autistic spectrum, especially if you're someone that's a newly diagnosed autistic adult, like I was a few years ago, and to find that meaningful life that you can have, a way of understanding your own life and understanding your way forward and finding fulfillment, finding a joy in this new identity of being autistic. If you identify as a autistic adult like this, especially if you've been newly diagnosed, you'll probably resonate with a lot of what I have to say on this channel. I do want to share some of the challenges that I've had, because I know it's not all, oh yeah, we've now got this superpower and we can be really positive about this. There are some real challenges that I'm still experiencing today, and things that I've wrestled with, regrets in my life that I think if only I'd have realised, I would have taken a different path or talked to someone differently and approached a situation differently. And a lot of these challenges and regrets come from looking back, having a diagnosis so late in life and wondering what would it have been like to have had that diagnosis earlier. How would that have helped? What support might I have got? What help might I have got along the way? And learning to cope with and being compassionate on myself and saying, well, you can only know what you knew at the time. You can only act in the way that you act at that particular time. You can't know the things that you know now. I mean, had that understanding and that revelation of being autistic, having reflected on what that means for so long, I'm in a very different position to where I was 10, 20 years ago or more. I want to share some of those challenges, some of how that feels, having processed, and it takes some processing, how these emotions have affected me. Because it's not something as being autistic is, we don't always fully understand our own emotions. And it does take some time to reflect back and to process them. But I do want to share some of these strengths, these gifts, these talents that I believe might come with autism. Not everyone experiences all of these, and if some of them you don't, that's don't feel that as a pressure or as that you're in any way less. just that these are some that have come for me, and I just want to bring out some positivity because there's so much negativity out there and so much talk of autism as a complete deficit and as a and so much talk about the challenges and difficulties with it. I just want people to have that insight that there is and there can be some uh, positive aspects and some strengths, some gifts, some talents with that. And I just want to share how I personally have tapped into some of these and how by doing that I've found a sense of fulfillment in my life, and how I've brought some of these to my life and into my relationships, into my family life, into my relationship with my wife, into my friendships, and we'll talk about all of those things, what those things might mean, and how we can bring those strengths, or how I have brought those strengths, and maybe you can glean something from them. It's not to tell you how you should necessarily do these things, but hopefully you'll be able to glean um, some tips, some ideas from how I've experienced these things. I do hope to post a video most weeks, and if you're interested in uh, what I'm saying here and Autistic Heroes, then please subscribe to this channel. I've got plenty of ideas of what I want to cover, but I do want to say, if you've got any questions, if you've got any topics that you're particularly interested, please add them in the comments, and please tell me what sort of things you would like to see on this channel. It would be great to have some feedback. So thank you.